Hello and welcome everyone to Token Topics. We're going to dive into some awesome Stellar XLM news. We got some great developments going on, such as domain names are now live through Soroban. This is going to make it a lot easier for people to want to conduct transactions and business on Stellar. It's a lot more user-friendly and practical. Also, we're going to look into Stellar's United States Treasury response. That's a big deal. And one of Stellar's vital partners has an incredible achievement they announced. We're going to look into that. And we're going to hear from none other than Jed McCaleb himself. He was just recently interviewed from Dixon. So this is an exciting video you're not going to want to miss. We're going to go over these topics and more. If you're a Stellar fan, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like and share so others can learn about Stellar and this amazing blockchain network. It's important to know that I'm not paid for or sponsored by Stellar. Let's dive in. It's important to keep your assets, your crypto, safe. Purchase a D'CENT wallet through Token Topics affiliate link in the description of every video, and you can receive an incredible discount. This is exciting. A huge milestone for smart contracts on Stellar. Band Protocol's integration allows developers to access real-time data and build innovative DeFi solutions on the Stellar network. This is great news for Stellar fans. ARF, one of Stellar's vital partners, has surpassed $1 billion of on-chain liquidity volume, and it's only going to increase. In case you're not familiar with ARF, ARF was established with the objective to transcend the limitations of existing financial frameworks through the application of innovative technologies such as Stellar. So ARF, a global transaction service platform at the intersection of Web3 and traditional finance, announced that it has surpassed $1 billion in on-chain liquidity volume to support global payments. This milestone underscores ARF's category, defining leadership with its unique blend of blockchain-powered solutions for global financial institutions. ARF is embracing the challenges of global payments with groundbreaking solutions. To ensure adequate liquidity for global transactions, financial institutions rely on their own equity or credit from lenders. However, these practices limit their capital structures and present opportunity costs for growing transaction volumes. Likewise, lenders such as banks encounter challenges in funding financial institutions due to a lack of operational transparency and robust risk management. In response to these challenges in the global payments industry, ARF introduced the world's first RWA, or real-world asset tokenized based working capital solution for global transactions. ARF liquidity brings internet speed to international payments and addresses a $4 trillion liquidity gap through blockchain technology. Supported by Stellar, ARF is at the forefront of providing enhanced access to the global financial system, proving the practical value of blockchain in solving real-world financial challenges. To put it simple, that they are trying to help eliminate the need for nostro vostro accounts, pre-funding. Stellar had some nice words to say. As a steadfast supporter of ARF's innovative journey, we are thrilled to witness their remarkable achievement of reaching $1 billion in on-chain liquidity volume, said Phil Meng, Head of Treasury at Capital Markets at Stellar Development Foundation. This milestone is proof of utility realized using a Stellar asset and rails for cross-border settlements to solve real pain point for payment companies and advance global payments. Our success is a testament to the power of blockchain technology in creating equitable access to financial services, and we are proud to be part of this transformative journey. We're excited to see the next phases, especially with the recent enablement of smart contracts on Stellar. Let's dive into this article here, Open Systems and Financial Inclusion, the SDF's Treasury Response. The Stellar Development Foundation recently submitted a letter in response to a request for information on financial inclusion issued by the U.S. Department of Treasury. This response blends our work on financial access with our continued efforts to advocate for open systems by combining these two focus areas. SDF aims to inform Treasury development of a national strategy for financial inclusion from a technological perspective, emphasizing that tools to further financial access and inclusion can benefit from open source and transparent technology. In our response, we address two key points: the importance of access when defining financial inclusion and how to leverage technology to advance financial inclusion efforts. Before I continue, if you want to read through the actual written response, the link to that is in the description. You can download it, but I want to go over this key outline here. from the Stellar Development Foundation. So the SDF defines access as a core testnet for the advancement of financial inclusion. Access to formal financial systems such as bank accounts is crucial for individuals, households, and small businesses to participate in an increasingly digital economy and unlock advanced services like savings and lending. We propose that consumers should have access to free or low-cost products that support everyday financial transactions in today's cashless economy. Services that leverage digital wallets and blockchain technology can address traditional barriers like minimum bank account balances and account fees that preclude participation in the formal economy. As a public and freely accessible blockchain, the Stellar Network provides a rich environment and set of technical tools for such everyday financial services. Our response also supports the use of innovation like smart contracts to empower individuals. Smart contracts are self-executing code on digital ledgers that operate as automated if-then statements, functioning without the need for intermediaries. This innovation enables consumers to access financial services without relying on legacy actors that have historically excluded certain communities. Open source code plays a crucial role here. Open source smart contracts allow for transparency and collaboration, enabling developers to review and modify source code freely. In the financial services industry, the use of open source code promotes trust and security by allowing users to verify the integrity of the code and detect vulnerabilities. This transparency is particularly important given the sensitive nature of financial transactions and the potential for new trust gaps to form from unverifiable code written behind closed doors. Our response also highlights the significance of open data to further financial inclusion efforts. For example, Brazil's open banking initiative allows customers to opt in and permit their bank to share financial data like transaction history with independent third-party providers. Through application programming interfaces, banks and fintech firms can access this information to develop data-driven tools to serve customers, fostering innovation and competition. Historically, financial institutions have not allowed customers to own and share their data. SDF supports initiatives like open banking that leverage open data to empower consumers to own and use their data to access a wider range of services. SDF's letter offers key considerations when developing a national strategy for financial inclusion and suggests deploying an open system philosophy. We appreciate the opportunity to respond to the Treasury's RFI and remain committed to working with policymakers on this issue. This is pretty cool. Check this out from Stellar. Soroban Domains. You can register your own XLM domain for free. Now, this is much more practical for the real world. Instead of having a long string of letters like your public key, you use an easy-to-remember username to identify yourself on the network. And according to this, once you create an account, your ID, it will last forever. And they're intending to be a community-owned protocol in the future. The user names on the network are completely free to register. You can check it out. Why using domains on a network? There are multiple benefits of using such a type of system, but the most clear benefit is being able to share your domain instead of a public key or a wallet address. For example, if someone wants to receive funds, they can share paul.xlm instead of a long string of numbers and letters. Another benefit is being able to group public keys or wallet addresses under one same domain thanks to the subdomains. For example, one company could have payments.company.xlm and holdings.company.xlm are both under the management of company.xlm, but at the same time, they both translate to different wallets. This makes it much easier for those interacting with it. Now we have the pleasure of listening to Jed McCaleb, one of the founders of Stellar. He was recently interviewed by none other than Danielle Dixon, the CEO of the Stellar Development Foundation. We're going to get a rundown on his history and why he was a programmer. We're also going to listen in on some of the problems that the industry is facing and the solutions that he has created. Pretty much an overall outlook of who Jed McCaleb is. Enjoy.
Jed, thank you for joining Block by Block.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
So Jed, this podcast brings in a bunch of different listeners. So while it's strange for me to ask you this question, since I know you so well, for our listeners, could you share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Let's see. I'm a programmer by background. I've been programming since I was a little kid. I started several companies along the way, a file sharing service called eDonkey 2000, the first Bitcoin exchange called Mt. Gox, and Ripple, and then SDF, which is where this podcast is coming from, I guess. And since like residing full time there, I've started a few other things. Vast, which is a space station company, and Astera, which is a nonprofit mainly focused on AI. So,
when you say you started programming when you were a little kid, how old were you?
I was in the 3rd grade, so I don't know what age that is, but I'm probably around 8 or something like that.
Yeah. And why? What brought you to it?
Oh, one of my mom's friends, this is like early days in computing, like very few people had personal computers. One of my mom's friends like brought me over, I was at one of my mom's friend's houses, and he was like, hey, describe a video game. And I described it. And we came back like, I don't know, maybe a month later or something like that. And he showed it to me, and that blew my mind. And I was like, wow, people can do this. So I want to be able to do that. And then since then I was like trying to figure out how to make games, and that kind of like started it. So there's just the fact that you could like imagine a thing and then like see it real was super compelling, and still is to me.
So you described a video game that you wanted to play or that you knew about already?
Well, I think I had seen something like it, but yeah, I just, again, like computers were kind of new then. So like you didn't see a lot of video games. So I think I'd probably seen it. I was like, okay, I want this game where there's a little ship. And I just described that what I thought would be cool. And then, yeah, he had made it. So that was pretty awesome.
That's a pretty savvy way to get you into something, actually. And so since then, you've been coding?
Yeah. Basically, since then I've programmed. If I don't program for a long time, then I get pretty sad. So.
And when you do program, do you just sit and do it for hours, or do you take breaks, or how do you do it?
I definitely used to be able to just grind for longer periods of time. Like during the eDonkey days, I could just program for 16 hours a day or whatever. Now I feel like probably because I'm getting older, there's like more things going on. It's harder to find that many like that long of a block of time. So I feel like attention is my limiting factor at this point. But
yeah, you've got a lot of stuff going on. In terms of like when you just went through, it's so interesting to me when you went through the different companies that you've started. I know how and why you started each of them, but it feels to me like the story is that you were starting to fix something that you saw, or fill a need that you had. Is that what you were doing with the file sharing company?
I mean, that just seemed like a super interesting problem. I mean, it's like this distributed network where you're essentially not just making one program, but it's a program that has to kind of work organically with itself, but multiple little nodes. And so, it was just pretty cool to work on. Also, like the file sharing applications that existed before eDonkey, they had a lot of like very obvious problems. Like they didn't hash the files, so you never knew if you got the whole file or not. Things like that. Like there was like a lot of like innovation that we brought to it. They would like also like just download the file from the beginning, whereas you could actually just download it from all the parts and get it from like many different peers at once, so the downloads could go out faster. So there's just a lot of cool things that were kind of like obvious that you'd want to do if you knew what you're doing. So, the
complexity of the problem was interesting to you. So it wasn't just like the solution. It was actually the way that you had to solve it.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely like working on things that are like, challenging and hard and interesting. Right. So, that was the problem with the like Bitcoin exchanges. It was cool on one level, but it's not, I mean, there are challenges there, especially as you scale, but like on the face of it, it's not as challenging as like making a peer-to-peer network. Right. So, it's inherently less interesting. So I didn't do it that long, but. Yeah.
And the Bitcoin exchange, was that when you first got into Bitcoin, or had you already been sort of understood it, knew about it, played with it a bit, and then you sort of delved into it?
No, that was, I learned about Bitcoin in that summer of like 2010. And then like a couple weeks later had made Mt. Gox. So yeah, it was kind of a way to kind of like understand Bitcoin better and like work with it and stuff like that, like build a real thing on top of it. So that was part of the motivation. And also just, there was no real way to buy Bitcoin before that, or like that wasn't super clunky. So, it just seemed obvious that this thing should exist. So I thought it'd be cool.
And then you went into and developed Ripple and then Stellar soon after that. And what was it about blockchain that was interesting to you?
Well, I mean, just the fact that I could basically before I ran into Bitcoin or discovered Bitcoin, I didn't think it was possible to solve that problem where you could have this like record or like account in the world that everybody agreed on, but no one was in charge of. And that's like a super powerful idea. It allows you to do lots of different things and allows you to kind of operate in this decentralized manner where, now you can send value around to people without really having these intermediaries, which I think is very powerful. And it's like similar to how the internet works, right? Where pre-internet, you needed like intermediaries to like deliver information from one person to another. But like post-internet, you kind of don't need that, right? So, and it just unlocks, like, I just feel like anytime you can kind of like decentralize these like concentrations of power, it ends up being better for everybody, right? This is kind of what the file sharing thing was too. It's like before file sharing, it was hard to just like, if you made something, it was very hard to distribute it out there to the world, but post file sharing, like you could do that very easily, right? So, yeah, so I think it was kind of a similar idea. It's just like, how do you kind of enable access to lots of folks and just kind of like level the playing field essentially. And yeah, and then the technology was just like super interesting. Like, again, it was like this peer-to-peer system that is very complicated and yeah, it's just like technically very cool. And then I think it could potentially have like lots of really good benefits for folks. So yeah.
When you did started eDonkey and then Mt. Gox and then even Ripple and Stellar, did you start them from the standpoint of thinking about the tech stack, or were you starting from the standpoint of thinking, oh, there could be a business here, or was it both?
Well, with eDonkey, I thought that I could make something that people would like be excited about and use. With Mt. Gox, it was more just kind of on a lark, just to see like, hey, will this work? It was just kind of I mean, I only ran that for like 6 months or something like that, so it wasn't very long. But yeah, and well, with Ripple, yeah, I thought, hey, I think Bitcoin's awesome, but I do think that there's some more efficient way. I think the mining process is sort of this constant drag on the system, where it's kind of like sucking value out. And it's been okay to date just because there's been more money flowing into it. But at some point that will change. And at equilibrium, I think mining will be like a huge problem. So I wanted to figure out a way to again, solve this like, distributed ledger that everyone agrees on, without mining. And so that kind of led to the idea of that, like, underpin Ripple. But yeah, so I was hoping that people would use that and it would take off.
So when you think about like your time when you worked full time in blockchain, so you can include Mt. Gox, you can include Stellar, you can include Ripple. What was the biggest challenge that you faced during that time as you're building these organizations?
I mean, that like, all of those were pretty early days in crypto. So there was, there's still a lot of regulatory uncertainty, but there was even more then. So that was definitely an issue. It was maybe a little bit harder to attract talent, just because like people were very uncertain about what this stuff was. And you kind of had to have a certain mindset to be into it. And it will like, like a kind of an appetite for risk. So, I think that was one of the biggest challenges, is to actually like, convince people that this wasn't just some crazy scam, and that it had legs and would be meaningful and useful for folks. That obviously like got easier and easier as the years have gone by. But yeah, that like the regulatory thing and just like the general uncertainty around the whole enterprise was probably the hardest part.
Yeah. I always think about the fact that we want this to happen so quickly with blockchain. And if you think about how long it took the internet to get to like success, whatever that means, we are expecting massive change in a really short period of time, which I know we should be able to get to because the tech stack is there. But it's just an interesting thing to say, like, when you think about risk, I think that people feel like there's less risk now in this space. But I still think the regulatory uncertainty, like, sways back and forth, like right. Every few days. So, yeah. So those things are still kind of there. Yeah. Well, once you decided that, that you were going to step away from Stellar, at least from a full-time standpoint, I know that he's still our chair and, we still spend a lot of time together. When you thought about what you were going to do next, how did you decide? I know you have two companies that you founded since then, so Astera and Vast, but how did you decide that you were going to get into the space, or in terms of Astera and AI?
Yeah. Let's see. I guess, I mean, I really like this phase between projects where, there's lots of ideas and you're kind of trying to figure out what to do, and you kind of like explore freely. I mean, once you like set on a project, like you're kind of like, I did Enoki for like, I don't know, 7 years, and SDF, I was there for like 7 years also. It's like, it's a big chunk of time that where you just like are committed to it, and that's all you're thinking about. And so I definitely was, excited to, to take a step back and just be able to like think broadly about, hey, what's important in the world? What am I interested in? What do my skills, like what can I actually make an impact in? Like what is kind of useful to do? But I kind of got too excited and ended up starting both of these things, which in retrospect, I should have just done one, but it is what it is. So yeah, so I mean, both of them are things that I've been kind of thinking about and wanting to do for a very long time, with Vast, which is, essentially the goal there is I think it's super important that people like get off the planet and out into the solar system and kind of start expanding where humans can live. And
just before you get into it, why do you think that's important?
Well, yeah, because basically, if you imagine this world where there's like millions of billions of people living in space, I mean, I think it's like, not only is it economically better, like there's a lot of resources up there and energy and stuff that we could harvest, and like, it's like, like in terms of just like GDP, it's worth it. Right. But also I think psychically it's better because people need a frontier, right? We just haven't had a frontier for a very long time because the earth has been all explored. And if you don't have that, then the world starts feeling very zero sum. And I think it just leads to all kinds of like bad outcomes, like with people psychically, like they start thinking about degrowth and like the wars start and all this kind of stuff. Like it's just bad, right? So having a frontier, which we've had for most of human civilization, is like, I think super important and kind of the way we're wired. So in order to get that back again, I think is important. And so, yeah, so I think I've wanted that for a very long time, and kind of always like jokingly said, like if I was ever super successful, I'd go like mine asteroids or whatever. And then, when I step back from Stellar, there's been, SpaceX has made a huge impact in kind of in the aerospace industry. Like launch is like super is like way cheaper than it was like 20 years ago. So it's making like a lot of things more possible. And so I kind of view like, again, like if I want this world where there's like a billion people living in the solar system, what is, obviously that's far off, but like what are the steps to get there? Getting mass cheaply to orbit is sort of the first one, and it seems like SpaceX is pretty much nailing that. And then the next step is like, how do you let humans live for a long period of time? Because if you're in like no gravity, then that has really bad health effects. You have bone loss, like there's weird problems with your retina, all these kind of things. Like you really can't live up there for more than a year. And so if we want to do big crazy things like mine asteroids or build Dyson spheres or whatever, we need to solve human habitation, which isn't going to involve like giving them gravity, so we're kind of aiming at this like space station that will spin to provide artificial gravity so people can live up there for years, and you can have like much bigger populations up there. So yeah, so that's what we're doing. We're hopefully going to launch our first module at the end of 2025 is the current plan, which is quite soon.
It's insane to me that I remember when you started this, and I remember it started very small, and now it's a lot bigger, and now you're going to do this in 2025. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. Yeah,
we're pretty excited about it. Yeah, it's getting very real. Yeah, we've got about like 270 people in a facility in Long Beach where this stuff is, sort of building hardware and everything. So yeah,
it is. It's remarkable, and a really strong team there. So it's great to see that. I marvel at what you've done in a short period of time. And then with Astera, that was at the same time period.
Yeah, so I started them both basically at the same time again, like kind of unfortunately, so yeah, so Astera, so I mean, it does a few things. It works on like scientific publishing and like a few other things, but its main focus is AI, and it's essentially looking at like there's lots of AI labs right now. We're kind of trying to take a different tact, and again, it's one of these things where I think it's clearly going to happen soon. We'll have machines that can think kind of on the level of humans, and that will just be super impactful and basically change everything. So anything that I think that I want to do, I'm like, well, it'd be better to figure out AI to be able to do that thing first, right? So it just seems like the highest leverage thing you can do, especially like given my background. So so it's really hard not to work on. So but yeah, so our approach.
I think, wait, just one second. I think you told me like 2 years ago that AGI was right on the cusp. Do you still think that?
Yeah, I think we'll have it quite soon here. I don't know. You know, it's depends on what you mean by AGI and like when it'll be, but you know, things are going to start changing really quickly over the next few years here. It's going to get really crazy. So.
Okay, so I interrupted you. Tell us more about Astera.
Oh yeah, so basically, you know, again, there's like tons of big open or AI labs like OpenAI and Anthropic and DeepMind, all these guys, right? And so, but they're all kind of working in a very similar direction, just like you know, taking like machine learning and kind of like scaling it up and like, you know, doing some things like this. So and that's obviously having you know, an impact and it's working to some degree, but I still think there's like this kind of like fundamental piece that's missing, and so we're looking closer at how the brain actually works and like trying to figure out the algorithms that are represented in the brain, like, you know, like how does the basal ganglia like affect decision making and all this kind of stuff, or how does the hippocampus store memories, and because I think these are the kind of the pieces that are missing from the current models, and so, you know, I think probably the real solution will be some marriage of these things where, well, we'll learn, like we'll get insight from the actual brain of how to do decision making and reasoning and planning, and kind of tack that on to these larger models. So that's kind of the route we're going down. So it's been pretty fun.
We had this conversation not that long ago where we talked about why there's this difference in terms of acceptance, or difference in terms of how regulators have approached blockchain versus artificial intelligence. Do you have a sense as to why you think that it seems like artificial intelligence is kind of accepted by the regulators as something that's going to be powerful and potentially good? And they haven't tried to restrict it or to regulate it out of existence, which some say that's what's happening in blockchain. Do you have a sense as to why that might be? Yeah,
I mean, well, like, I mean, there's already a lot of existing regulations that touch upon like the things that blockchain touches on. Like, you know, there's tons of regulation around money, movement of money, and like all this kind of stuff. And so, you know, there's already kind of a framework that it can kind of fit into or worry people, right? And whereas with AI, it's like very new, and it's there's no precedent for it, and it's just strange, and people aren't sure what's going to happen. Whereas, you know, if you explain what like blockchain can do, where, you know, hey, you can move money instantly to all these people get that, and like, and there's like clear worries that arise from that. And so I think that's basically why it's AI is just like further out of like distribution for what these people are used to regulating. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good part of it. I also think that we talk about AI as if AI is an industry. And I think of AI really as that tech that's going to be in every industry. And so there's a little bit of differentiation there, because really with blockchain, you can use it for a lot of different things, but for the most part, the focus is on the financial industry.
Right.
And so I think that's probably right in terms of how we think those things through. So
there's also the consumer element. I mean, lots of like individual people are like, you know, giving money to these weird things like FTX or whatever. Right. And so like there's people are actually losing money or like gaining crazy amounts of money. Right. So that part gets like all the consumer protection stuff engaged. So, yeah.
Any comments you want to make on the OpenAI drama?
Oh, I don't know. It's super confusing. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't really have any more insight than other folks, but yeah, it seemed wild.
It was a roller coaster, like for that weekend, to see how that was going to end up. In terms of the working with respect to space, and thinking about like the regulation and the technology and how that's being received, how do you feel about that to date?
I mean, it's another one of these areas where it's brand new. I mean, there's never been a commercial station before, so there isn't a lot of regulation around it yet. So, you know, I mean, I think it's similar to both crypto and AI stuff, where it just hopefully the regulators aren't going to, like, you know, because they can always just kind of squash these kind of nascent things if they take a heavy-handed approach. So hopefully they're pretty permissive about what people can do up there, and how this evolves, and kind of wait to see kind of thing. So, but yeah.
How do you find it to date, like in terms of what you guys are doing? Have you found that, I know there already are regulations that apply to a lot of the work that you guys are jumping in on, but do you feel like there's a more of a restrained approach?
No, I mean, there's export regulations that like all aerospace stuff has, that we fall under, things like that. But those are, you know, mostly that just means you can only work with U.S. citizens. But yeah, I mean, the stuff where like, actually people in orbit, I mean, a lot of this is kind of still remains to be seen. You know, there's like licenses you have to get from like various organizations, but so far it seems like definitely, I'm definitely way less worried about it than I was during crypto times. So, you know, like, yeah, like that stuff is way more uncertain than this. Like, this seems fairly clear what we need to do. So,
yeah, that's interesting.